Welcome, everybody, to another episode of SaaS Stories. I am super excited to be joined today by Rachael McBrearty from Evisort, all the way from San Francisco. Welcome, Rachael.
Hi, Joanna. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Now, I'm really excited to talk to you today because as the Chief Customer Officer at Evisort, I have a lot of questions related to customer success and customer experience. But my first one really is all about you. Tell me about your journey, your story. How did you get into the world of SaaS and what drew you to Evisort?
Yeah, well, my first purely SaaS experience was the last company I was at, LeanData, who helps companies to improve buying experiences. So I've been in the space of sort of go-to-market customer experience for a long time. Actually, fun fact, I was at Cisco when Cisco was moving from on-prem into the cloud and they'd acquired WebEx. So everyone at Cisco was all buzzing about everybody wanted to be a SaaS company like WebEx. And there were sayings like, no longer want to leave the boxes at the dock and walk away. We've got to be in there with the clients and, develop the ability to land and expand and ensure adoption. So that was fun because that was very early days. And I was part of a team that the CEO, John Chambers, created, which was focused on helping our clients to get to value. And he would always say, if our customers are successful, we will be successful. And that always struck me and stuck with me. And it was sort of at this whole cusp of getting into the whole new SaaS world. So it was very inspiring. And that's how I got into it on an Evisort. Evisort is also obviously a SaaS platform. We're a leader in AI for document intelligence. We get AI insights on legal and business documents, and we take those insights and help companies to reduce spend, increase revenue, mitigate risk. And what I was really excited about with Evisort is I could not believe there was yet an area of business that had not been really digitized. How is it that contracts and documents that have all of this great information are stored in PDFs, or as like we like to say, in little PDF jails? So, what we're about at Evisort is taking that unstructured data and making it into structured data that organizations can use. And there's so many opportunities to really expand that across the enterprise.
Yeah, so interesting. And I'm honestly not surprised at all that there's this gap as well. Most founders that I speak to, I mean, their biggest competitor is like spreadsheets, documents, and they've just gone and gone, well, surely there's a better way to do this.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Now,
well, it's like anything else. It's just, and we can talk about just the challenges of adoption of technology from the perspective of the buyer and how
yeah.
important it is to get super focused when you do start out so that you can get, make that change within your organization. Because people are tough, right? None of us want to change how we work. We're comfortable in spreadsheets, even though it might take us longer. That's what we're used to. We don't want to
Yeah.
change.
No, absolutely. Actually, I would love to talk to you about that. I've been recently rereading Crossing the Chasm, which kind of gives you the technology adoption cycle where you have your innovators, your early adopters, and then kind of goes into the early majority, late majority. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Why is it that we're so tied to our old ways and, it's change management is so difficult in some organizations?
Well, I think I always reference the Lego movie. I don't know if you've seen the Lego movie, but it's one of my favorites, where you have the master builders and then you have the ordinary folks. And it's the master builders that can take the pile of Legos and they create these wonderful things. And the ordinary folks are sort of mesmerized by it. They're like, we don't get this at all. They need the kits. They need the little instruction books and the kits that Lego makes, and they can follow them and get it done and they make a creation, but they have to have an instruction book. I think about that when I think about, especially at an Evisort, which is a new, it's very new. The CLM space is new. Everything that we're doing is new. Even doing all of the analytics on top of the contracts is a very new way of working. We do attract the master builders at first, right? Those are the innovators. Those are the people who kind of get it and they're in it with you and they're so excited because they get it and they want to build stuff. I think as we mature, we have to start thinking about how we take that raw pile of materials and turn them into kits that can go out to the mass market. So that's what we think about. And that's what we're thinking about here at Evisort. How do we make packages, easy things to start so that we can start with folks that really do like a prescriptive approach, and it starts small with them. They can start building something easy, and then over time they can expand.
That is such a fascinating way of looking at it. I love that that's such a good reference, the Lego movie. It makes so much sense when you put it that way. Um, yeah, it's so true. And so something that's always fascinated me, about customer success and customer experience is a lot of the companies I talk to and a lot of the marketers and founders I talk to, they're always focused on net new customers, new logos, new relationships, new everything. But really, what I find lately is, especially in the world we live in today, it's actually customer success that's going to be responsible for majority of the revenue that a company can bring on. So I'm curious to hear, what got you into customer experience and customer success, and then what are your thoughts on it as well?
Well, I have a maybe unique background to now be an executive in a company. I started out as a designer. I was a book designer.
Right.
I did travel, how-to cookbooks, and then I parlayed that experience of organizing information to become an information architect in the early days of web-enabled applications. That was the late 1990s, so the internet was just taking off. There was a shortage of folks that could do that work, so it was a good career leap. But then I kind of moved beyond that to the design of applications, to actually realizing that it was more than that, right? It was really about service design, not just the application, but how you build out entirely new business models to improve the customer and employee experience. And so that's my kind of unique career path. I ended up, working for Cisco, as I had mentioned earlier, really helping Cisco's top customers to achieve business outcomes. And that was sort of the start of getting into customer success, truly by realizing that if you worked back from their business success, then you could really create these very influential advocates and grow the accounts. Because at the end of the day, my philosophy around customer success is, in my job as a chief customer officer, is revenue. It isn't happy customers or customers that stay. It needs to be customers that stay and grow, because that really is key. You want them to be buying more and engaging more with you, and that you continue to build out your portfolio to offer more of a solution to help them. And that's also part of our job, giving feedback to product. Oh, great, they're buying a can of paint, but do we also have brushes and drop cloths and other things? So, really trying to think holistically around how to solve their problems, and providing that feedback loop.
Yeah, and that's so critical in, I mean, again, like you said, cross-selling, upselling opportunities, but then also, they jump around from company to company. So they're going to take your
Yeah.
business and put you in the new company as well as maybe they have some friends they want to sell. So it's a very good angle.
Yeah, we tracked that at my last company, which was a little bit larger in size, so it was a little easier. Yeah, quite a bit of the net new business that came in were repeat customers or referenced customers, and we called it virality, and we tracked it. Just to say, yes, it is a thing. It's not just something you could say, oh, yeah, maybe that's going on. I can tell you it was definitely going on.
Yeah, no, for sure. Actually, something I've been really fascinated with lately is, and definitely kind of exasperated by the COVID-19 pandemic, is how the way they shop in the world of B2B has changed, because I think we were all forced to really embrace digital and self-serve. So there's definitely been a lot of changes in, how accelerated the buyer journey is before they actually reach out to a company or the sales team. Is that something you've seen in your line of work? Have you noticed any kind of changes in the way they consume, especially SaaS in the world of B2B?
Yeah, no, for sure. They definitely do a ton of research, and come usually when you're shortlisted is when you really get the sense that they're interested in buying. By then they've done a lot of research. In a lot of cases, we know they've already spoken to our customers, because sometimes our customers are like, so and so called me. Like, oh, we didn't even connect you. They just called you because they saw your logo on our website and found you. So they're doing
Right.
a lot of it on their own. Yeah, they're not even asking you to give them a reference. They're just backdooring it. They're not waiting. And so they're finding out for themselves or from their peers even more so. So that goes back to the importance of those established relationships. And, I mean, we know at the end of the day, it can go back to the tried and true. You don't buy based on the facts and data. At the end of the day, you buy based on emotion. But, what does that mean in business? It means that you're going to buy from someone who you trust to get you to your end goal. That's going to be a partner, especially in a lot of large enterprise clients who are buying our solutions, and it's going to take a while to roll out. They want to know you're going to be there for them. They're going to want to know you're going to get them there. And so there's that human component and that trust that gets built. Like, you're educating them, they're learning about the product. That's super important. You want them to be knowledgeable, but you also have to trust that you're going to take them there. And that's one of the things that we're really keen on at Evisort is being famous for is, that we are there for our customers to help them through. And we do as much to digitize and get rid of all the things that don't matter to be able to spend time with them. But the human element is super important, and you need to know when to be there, because they're going to do all the research on their own. But when they come to you, you got to start to build that trust and know that by the time they come to you, they've already kind of have some feeling that it's going to be okay. And so it's, that we're going to be able to meet their needs, but then you got to build a relationship. And I think that makes it a breaker at the end of it. Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I think I love that you used the word trust. I think trust is your biggest currency today. Just you mentioned enterprise as well, and yes, they definitely do their own research, but then to influence an enterprise client, you probably need to convince 6 to 8 people on the team. And I think they're all kind of doing their separate and own research. So what would be your recommendation with enterprise? How do you gain trust? How do you get in front of, the 6 to 8 decision makers that you need to influence?
Yeah, and that's even harder in the remote world, isn't it? Like, before you get in a room. And we have lately, actually, it's been so awesome. We've been able to have in-person meetings late in the sales stage where, like, all the stakeholders are in the room. So you can actually see, and you kind of get an idea of like, okay, I know what that person needs or that person. But no, you're spot on. I think making the mapping of the stakeholders, understanding their positions, and you do have to intentionally design the experience to hit on those stakeholders, and they don't all have the same needs, right? The person who's going to be owning, and in the case of Evisort, the legal ops team that needs to own and maintain the solution from the, chief legal officer, they're very different needs. And so you have to have content and engage with them in different ways. That is your buying group, and buying groups are a thing. Buying groups are, I was at LeanData. All we did was manage buying groups, because that is truly how you know that a company is really ready to buy when they have multiple people. But also knowing you have to have content for each of those, right? And a journey for them. And I think the other thing to think about is, as you start to get that group on board, who are they going to be connected with post-sale? Because again, you talked about it, right? You're late in the game when they're making the decision. They're already kind of like saying, hey, yeah, we're interested in, yes, we'll take that data, go out to dinner. They're already starting the relationship with you. So maybe it's good you get your professional services team to meet the admin who's going to work with you, right? To stand up the solution, or the operations person. You make sure that your executive touches base with the executive at the company. So you're starting that relationship, and how you're going to continue it through post-sale, which is, you're not going to have your technical lead touching base with the chief legal officer. In our case, you're going to have our CEO connecting with them. So we think about that. It's getting humans engaged as well as the content. It's probably long-winded answering your question.
No, I love it. I love it. It's definitely a team sport at the end of the day, isn't it? It's not, you're not just dependent on sales bringing in the deals. There's actually a whole team of people that are responsible for growing the company.
Yes, absolutely. That's where we can talk about customer success. It almost gets distilled to a role, but we know that the companies that do it well know that it's a team sport, and that getting the customer to success is at the heart of it. I know but building that is really key, and it has to come from the leadership team.
Yeah. No, couldn't agree more. We do a lot of account-based marketing at Hat Media, and we always say, the first workshop, we don't just want to talk to marketing. We want your sales team. We want your customer success team. We want people, anyone that's talking to customers, we want to hear from them because at the end of the day, if we're going to put together an effective strategy, we need to realize, everyone's responsibilities, everyone's thoughts, everyone's experience. And it really does make a huge difference when the teams are aligned versus when they're kind of just doing their own thing.
They all see different parts of the elephant, right? Bring it all together.
Yes. What are some big challenges that companies face when they try to improve customer retention in your mind? I mean, alignment obviously is one of them. I think also a lack of focus, perhaps. Again, a lot of them are focused on new customers rather than actually retaining the ones they've just gotten. What are some other challenges you've seen?
Well, I think it starts with what does it take to make a customer sticky and really knowing what that is. I mean, it's, making sure that they're educated, that they have knowledge, that they get educated in your product and can become, as we say, power users is certainly important. And that starts from onboarding. And I think there's not enough thinking around really intentionally designing around the key things that really matter. So make sure that you get those customers, like in our case, we make sure that we get the clients through our academy and they get an academy badge. So you can actually put that in place and ensure that happens. We know that there are certain features that make customers really sticky because it provides value to them on a daily, weekly basis, not, and the frequency of use is super important. And so we have key features that we make sure get set up and put into implementation. And I think that's just to say that you really need to think about those couple of things that you need to make sure the organization does that you have learned are the things that, make the customer successful so that they are sticky and they stay, and that leads to retention. Onboarding it is the foundation of the relationship. If you do that well and you build that trust and you get that understanding, it's, if you do it poorly, it's a killer of the renewal. If you do it well, they forgive you a lot for a lot of things after that because you've established a relationship and you know what they're about, right? But if you don't bother to take that time during onboarding, when they're engaged, when you're engaged, to really set up that customer, that's where I see a lot of companies really do need to focus. And I think it's, at the end of the day, it's easier to look at quarterly sales numbers and see things closing. It's short term, it's actionable. The customer side of it is a longer game. It's a bigger system to build, and it just takes time to see the results. And that is sometimes really difficult to have everybody have the patience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the first, 90 to 180 days with the customers is critical and putting in place processes and systems. So speaking of processes and systems, obviously, the human element is very important to growing and keeping up customer success. But let's talk about AI and data and technology. Like, what do you use to measure customer success and, roll out campaigns that would help with that?
Well, I think it starts when we think about it starts pretty basically. Can you have a customer profile, a single source of truth where you can ensure everybody has a good understanding of the customer, that 360 usage patterns, engagement history, buying patterns. A lot of companies don't even gather that core information. They don't place a priority on gathering that feedback or CSATs, things that have happened, support. And that's sort of the foundation. If you have that data, then you can start to use you can do analysis on that data, right? You can get insights. You can understand patterns of behaviors over time. You can say, oh, this is this customer has bought everything and they're spending a lot. Why are these other customers who look just like them not doing that? You have that core information, you can gain a lot of insights. And so I always say companies need to start with that data foundation. Then you can, start to build in and get insights from that. And I think the other thing that's super simple when we think about data is the feedback loop. If you're gathering product issues and challenges and wants from customers who are just coming on board, Well, get them fixed because they're going to be the future customers' problems as well. They're not going to go away. So I
Yeah.
think that's where you can, even as humans, make sure you're fixing things. It doesn't all have to be predictive and proactive and machine learning and AI, just to start.
No, absolutely. Any specific tools that you recommend for anyone starting out in customer success?
Well, we're using Gainsight. There's a lot of success platforms. We do Salesforce. Everything goes back into Salesforce for us.
Yeah.
That has to be the source of truth because everybody needs the information. But we are using Gainsight, especially on the more digital touch, because we can, track different kinds of metrics and get those alerts out of the data when you're talking about, managing a whole huge cohort of customers. I think Gainsight's great for that. It's also great for automating communication. So a lot of our digital touch we do through Gainsight. It doesn't take the place, it doesn't help you with success plans. It helps you to manage your customers. But we do use it a lot just to get a sense of the health and create alerts and make sure we're on top of things.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is so crucial. I mean, and there's so much to measure as well. It's one is how are they actually using your product? But the other one is someone gave me a really good tip on the feedback loops. They said a lot of companies would send out a massive survey once a year, and a lot of the customers didn't complete that because it was like, oh, TLDR, just too long. I don't have time for this. But they recommended maybe sending like 1 or 2 questions every month. And it's so easy to do. They're more likely to do it. And you keep learning every month more and more. It's like progressively.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to the leader of digital, Bo Smith. He has set up a lot of the, data-driven insights and for our digital touch. But he's also created, let's call it a little tool. It's a PowerPoint slide and it's a circle with like 5 circles on it. And it's how are we doing with different aspects of the relationship. And he just asks them red, yellow, green, and he fills it in with them when he
Yeah.
like meetings, which he does like quarterly. And they just like say, oh, we met with the account manager, it was red, yellow, green, or we went to the webinars, red, yellow, green. And they love filling it in, but it gives us a really good sense of their sentiment. And it's not a survey. And I don't know, they love it. It's really
Yeah.
simple circle. So hats off to Bo because he has really transformed the whole thing, and they love that. They love doing that little exercise with them. So you're right. It's like the days of nobody wants to fill in a survey, and timeliness is perfect. And then we can also go, oh, whether they're 6 months in or 2 years in, we have a little bit of context of the timing of the ask, so we can track it.
Yeah, amazing. That sounds like a really nice interactive way to collect feedback. And yeah, I mean, if they're excited to do it, even better.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cisco, but you've also worked with major brands like IBM and Microsoft. I'm curious, what have been key takeaways from those experiences?
Successfully working with those customers is usually really dependent on having a compelling reason why they bought and being part of some core goal of the company. That's always helpful, but it's also making sure you've got that executive sponsor and relationship, and making sure you're kind of always going back to check in on what direction you're going in, because again, these large companies and implementations can go on for a while, but if you've got that really great executive stakeholder that you've built a relationship with, makes all the difference. And two, in these big companies, building out a business case, and tracking on that business case it's the difference between additional funding and growing and having challenges. So those are a couple of the key things just from a relationship and communication perspective. But the other thing you have to be ready for in selling into big companies is they tend to want customizations and special features. So you also have to be skilled at what does everybody else want versus what do you want, and be able to navigate those product requests. That becomes a key skill for the account management and CSM teams here at Evisort.
Yeah, no, that's so fascinating. Well, we've helped clients kind of break into, mid-tier businesses and when we're, but also enterprises. And it's just a completely different strategy when you're dealing with both of those. And I think you're right. It's a lot of it is about relationships, but also, yeah, we're seeing the customization side and also cybersecurity. they're a lot more focused on that, privacy, cybersecurity versus the other guys that are kind of just not as focused on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting, even when, we're talking about AI, so there's a lot of, we need to understand what AI you're using. Some of it's approved, some of it needs to go through approval process. And I think that's the other thing, that as you navigate, especially in the world of AI, we really look to make sure that we are able to identify where can we help within their process, where can we really focus, show that business benefit, make a case for where they should get started. It isn't like, hey, just let Evisort be, open your company, everybody play with it. It's getting focused on business value, a reason why they should move forward and invest in it, because then you can actually get momentum to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've started a podcast called OpStars, which has been running for quite a while, and I see that there's been some amazing guests on it. So I'm just curious to what led you to do that, and also what were the top three learnings just from interviewing guests?
Mm. Well, the heart of it is our customers are our biggest advocates and really help us to grow, right? I wanted to give them a platform where they could share their stories. So it was really about, how do I make our, in this case, revenue operations professionals stars? How do I help them grow their career? And so OpStars is about showcasing all the great work that they're doing and the success we're doing. And operations professionals are typically very much behind the scenes people. They are hardworking. They do a really thankless job. They're usually, only time you interact with them is when you have a problem, and they're really trying to run everything, and yet they still have to put out fires. So I love operations professionals. Now I'm working with legal operations professionals. And yeah, so the point was to have a way to showcase some of the people we were working with who are super, talented and doing amazing things. So it's not, as you'll see, it was really always about them. I think, what I learned from interviewing them is gosh, you learn so much. The sharing that can go across, the thank yous that we get for having people's stories out there, building a community, because it does feel like it's a community, right, when it's focused, and that goes a long way. And then we would have even events and have people get together, and they knew each other's stories. So, I loved that. A lot of the tactical learnings would very much be about them telling stories of how they would go in to do problem solving. A lot of what you do in operations is starting out, where are we as a company? How do I move it forward? How do I get organized and structured? So there's a lot of good advice on the podcast about, how to move projects forward and get organized and make sure you have a business impact.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I could definitely relate to that. I've learned so much just from running this podcast from everybody. It amazes me. It's just the stories that you hear, the journeys, and I love that you're highlighting their stories, because they are dealing with all the problems at the end of the day. So kudos to them.
Yeah, and isn't it, I feel, I really enjoy doing it, because I learned a ton too. And it's just great to engage with folks out there who are in your community. So
Yeah.
very fulfilling for me as an individual too. I loved it. Passion
Yeah.
project.
Absolutely. No, amazing work. For anyone listening right now that kind of has motivations to be the next chief customer officer at their company, what advice would you give them?
Uh, well, I think at the core of the job is to represent the customers and to be able to make sure everybody knows what's going on in the customer base and where to focus in the customer base. So as you come up through, path could be up through being a CSM, through professional services. Um, Really, it's starting to present and be able to talk about how what you're doing impacts the business, even if it's in your particular team or role. Because at the end of the day, that's my job, is to make sure that we know, hey, if we do these 3 things, customers stay and grow. I have to come to you and say, we need to get people into the academy. We need to have them adopt these 3 features. This cohort, we brought on recently may not be performing as well. Maybe it's not the right ICP. So a lot of it is making sure that you can synthesize and bring information together to inform actions. That's the core of, I think, what enables me to be successful in the role. And then there's all the other, firefighting and everything else you do. But I think that's part of it from an executive perspective.
Yeah, very interesting. My last question for you. We've touched on the human element, we've touched on customer success, we've touched on the technology, we briefly touched on AI. So I'm curious, we might touch on this again with this next question, actually, because it's all about the next big trend and what you see as the future in customer experience.
Big question.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I do think that AI is going to have an impact on a lot of these processes. So, I think it's first like CS is still relatively new compared to other competencies. But I think that it's really the realization that the role of customer success or customer experience is about revenue. And I think this is catching on more and more. I think we are seeing the rise of the role of the CCO. And as you talked about, it's, at the end of the day, it gets to the point where you're managing more revenue with your renewals than you are on net new business coming in, right? There gets a tipping point. And there's more CCOs that end up going into CEO positions. And I think it's because there's a shift too in the market, right? It used to be growth at all costs. It's not that anymore. And the leader who understands how to build a system that serves a customer in a way that results in revenue growth, that is really what we're seeing. And the sky's the limit for folks in those roles and for companies that actually figure out how to do that. And I think then there's all of the other trends around, there is huge opportunity to use and apply AI to build data into the processes. I think, again, I mentioned before, how would I advise folks getting started with AI is really understanding your existing workflows or processes, figure out what improvements you want to make, and then apply AI and machine learning and data to those aspects of your process. You don't need to reinvent everything to start to make huge improvements of things that can, help you to optimize, or do things like, instead of, this is a simple example, it's not even necessarily an AI example, but, let me click to schedule a time to talk to you. Rather than making me call you to then schedule a meeting. There are places, right, you can just shortcut and not have to go through steps. But I think like any other digitization, where can you focus for improvement? You can automate communication. You can create triggers. You can analyze propensity to buy so that you're not waiting to ask the customer when they want to buy something. You actually have, because of the data you've been collecting, when customers are more likely to buy. So there's different points in those processes where you can really apply AI to really grow your business. And I think that's going to be the next big trend, is figuring out those hot spots in the process.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. I love that advice on AI. It's like, I think people are just so excited and so overwhelmed at the same time by AI. They're not really thinking how best to use it. But you're right. Just look at your current processes and what can be, what can be made better and more productive with AI. Great
Yeah, I mean,
advice.
it's already some amazing things if you look at Zoom is building in, Gong, the analyzing of the conversation, synthesizing it for you. The notes are done already. Man, as a CSM or somebody who sits on a lot of customer calls, the idea that it's all synthesized with action items, that saves so much time. It's cool. So there's some simple things happening that I think they just free us up to spend more time with clients, which is what we should be doing. And, we don't have, growth at all costs. We also have to be super productive. I think it's profitable growth. And so where we can optimize, where we're spending time that can be automated, is really, we should be looking at that too from behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Actually, speaking of Gong, I had Martin Garvey from Gong on the podcast, and he said exactly that. He said, like 70% of a salesperson's job is not selling and not dealing with customers. And so Gong is trying to change that through AI and, just better data.
I'm a big fan. The notes and things I get, I am such a big fan. It's really gonna, they're, and I can tell they're just getting started, but I already get reports and things back. So
Yeah,
that's just a great example of where, it seems so simple, but it really does completely change your ability to manage the customer base.
absolutely. Rachel, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Lots of insights gained today. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks.